And finally, it's great to welcome back to Minnesota Opera Tim Albery, who's done several wonderful productions for us in the past. So it's a real pleasure, and I will turn everything over to Tim Albery. Welcome back, Tim.
Hi, and actually somebody who Dale didn't mention who, he's not here any longer. Tobias, are you here? Oh yeah, yeah. Set and costume designer Tobias Hoheisel. That was quick, yeah. So these are photographs of the model, not of the production as it actually happened in Santa Fe, because you can see more clearly the actual architectural shapes that are involved. We chose to set it in costume terms around just prior to the First World War, around 1910, which was sort of the time at which Hofmannsthal wrote the short story upon which he then based the libretto when they got to work on this opera much later. We wanted to do two things, really, was to find a world which would all be one world that evolved to become the different places we have to be in during the evening. Secondly, because we were in Santa Fe, people who know Santa Fe will know that it's a structure that doesn't change shape, and it has these curving walls that go towards the back. And so somehow we wanted to work with those shapes, which led us to something you probably wouldn't think of working in a traditional proscenium, which I think means that it's going to look quite interesting in a traditional proscenium. And we wanted a feeling that the first act, where we're dealing with this destitute family living way beyond their means in a hotel that's way above their price bracket now, given where their budget has got to, the sense of a kind of empty, spare, rather cold space, contrasted in Act 2, which you'll see in a minute, with something much more lush and golden and warm and full of all the hope that the ball has for Arabella. And that fantastic first duet between him and her. And then finally in the third act, a colder, chillier space where everything goes wrong. Because essentially the last act only has the reconciliation at the end, but the rest of it is like some terrible tragedy in which everybody's lives falls apart. So we wanted a much colder, chillier, and also it's the middle of the night in a closed-up hotel space for that. And so Tobias created a space in which you can sort of see in this photograph, and we'll see more in a minute, that there's sort of greys and off-whites, and any colour in here in this model photograph, it's the sunlight that creates the warmth. The rest is very, very chilly. Let's go to the next picture, shall we? This is just to show you the architecture of the space. So these are the curving black sidewalls, which we'll be recreating here. And as you can see here, sort of sketched in at the side here, is the idea of another set of double doors that complement the ones within the actual architectural structure. Go to the next. And you can see here that if this is the sitting room of the hotel suite that they've rented, then there's a curve going away here that has 1, 2, and a third doorway just behind that pillar, which are the bedrooms of Arabella, Mama and Papa, and Stenka. So that anytime you want to go to your bedrooms, you're disappearing up this curve. And here you can see this is the front door into the apartment. So if you're with Zimmerkellner, you're living out there and constantly coming in and out. So this is almost like a little foyer here on the way out of the room. And we will discover that there's coat hooks on the back of this pillar here, and there's a bell pull for Wagner here to call the servants and so on. Let's go on. So this is just a couple of production photos to give you more of the space in light. So this is near the beginning, the end of the Santa Fe day going on up there, which was we look at. And this sort of cold winter light coming through the window. The luggage of the people who are ready to leave in a hurry should they need to when the bill gets called in. The flowers for Matteo, bills on the table, and yeah, good. And the next. And that's just to give you a sense of one of the atmospheres in Act 1. That of course is Stenko looking depressed and unhappy whilst Mother carries on with her insanity with the card dealer, with the tarot reader. Yeah. Again, just so you see the space in action. Yeah. Good. So let's look at some costumes. This is Stenka, who we see right at the beginning. What we wanted was a sense of what the costume drawing implies is a kind of costume that doesn't fit terribly well. The idea that this boy, he's not going to the tailors and having these perfectly done costumes. And Annie, where are you? Where are you, Elizabeth?
Oh, right here.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, sorry. And the idea that it's slightly sort of baggy and ill-fitting, and also designed to hide superstructure within this kind of looseness.
You had already the pleasure to.
Yeah. So you know. Yeah. Good. And then outdoor clothes for going sleigh riding and so on, and then finally, of course, how she appears in the third act. When she's just come from being in bed with Matteo. Yeah, let's go to the next. So this is Adelaide, who is slightly from an earlier time, more old-fashioned, hasn't been able to afford to buy a lot of new clothes recently. So this is her in Act 1 in her day dress. This is her up to the nines for the ball, and this is her in her coat and hat coming back from the ball in Act 3. Yep. These are various bits and pieces. So this is the idea of the fortune teller, slightly bohemian, slightly in her own kind of landscape of performing the role of the fortune teller. This is just the companion who comes, the chaperone who comes back from walking Arabella at the park. And this is the very different colour world of Fiaccamilli, which is a completely different colour range to anybody else. And of course based on the idea that it's the coachman's ball. And we decided in the end to dress all the chorus in evening suits on the theory that if we're saying that some of them are from the coach trade, they have rented their gear for this special ball tonight at the least. And that she represents the idea of the coachman, but also to give her a kind of aggressive, take no prisoners when dealing with men approach. And that's very much the approach that we took to that number, which is basically about subjugating men, supposedly to Arabella, but really to herself. And hence that look. Yep, let's go on. So Arabella is interesting because she comes in looking conservative and elegant from her walk. We see that underneath it is actually, in a way, the kind of clothes that she would probably end up wearing in Mandurica's country estate of a day. So quite Chekhovian, quite undemonstrative, almost blue stocking-ish, you know, a woman reading a book rather than a woman partying. So in a sense, it's what we will or she will discover, it's the choice she wants to make. But then when we get the ball music at the very end in that final aria when she goes, well, maybe I'll never meet that stranger again, and I probably shouldn't anyway, because he's probably married, and anyway, it wouldn't be a good idea. And I'd probably not be in love with him after 20 seconds like I'm not in love with anybody else after 20 seconds. So let's go party. And we see her putting on these last elements of this thing where she becomes, well, more like a tiger going out hunting than like a sort of nice, quiet young woman. So that's quite an interesting series of journeys in Act 1, I think. And then, of course, when we get to the ball, there'll be something else. Matteo, officer, there he is. Elena, very pleased with himself, very flash, a lot of money. This, again, there's quite strong hint of colour here that we'll be very aware of inside the coat. A man who's born to money, born to party, very good at it. And, you know, I respond to some of the things he says to Arabella, even though he's slight, he's light, he doesn't really think deeply, but he goes, why do you think so much? Just let go, have fun. And of course, there's a part of Arabella that goes, yeah, get me in that car and let's drive really fast. And so he represents that whole side of her personality that wants to live in a big city and know all the right people and go to all the right parties and see all the first nights and generally live life to the full. And yet there's that big hole inside her that says, that's not enough, is it? This is just someone in Act 2, any of the men in Act 2, White Tie and Tails. Okay. So then this other man turns up, and in colouring, what Tobias chose to do was we go into very much country colours, you know, the browns, that very dark, whatever that red is called, and a feeling of a man for whom this is all quite, so it's not all pristine clean, it's kind of quite ruffled. He's got tons of money, but it could matter less to him. Of course, for the ball, he dresses like everybody else. But in this first act, I think we're very, very aware that this is a man from a completely different cultural landscape to that of all the other characters, and who makes no apology for it. In fact, who relishes it. And of course, that's what she then comes to respond to. And I suppose at some level, it's that conversation that all of us have, or I think many of us have, about living in the country. You know, that kind of feeling that lots of city people have, that one day I'll go and live in the country and I'll live a much kind of purer, cleaner, healthier life than this crazy one I live in town. And I've made this decision, and I do that now, supposedly. And it is fantastic. And it is good to live amongst trees and so on. The Wald is important. And I suppose that is the contrast in the opera, isn't it? He represents that possibly illusion, but nonetheless that sense that you are yourself. And then that fantastic line, my favourite line, is when she says to him, you have your eigene Luft. Do you remember? It's like you walk into the room and you are who you are. You're not busy trying to be fashionable or in the know or know the right people. It could matter less to you. You just are who you are. That's what she ends up going, yes. I mean, it's great that he has lots of money, okay, next. So this is the sort of outer world of this. This is one of the waiters in Act 2. This is the idea of Velko and Jura with when they arrive with Mandrika. So then we go to Act 2, which, as you can see, is very different in terms of its warmth. And we're going to go through a series of photographs in a minute, but essentially, so at the back there's this curved wall, which is in fact the other side of the curved wall that had the window in it in Act 1. And if you coming through one of these doors here, you're gamblers, that's where Wagner hangs up most of the act. And if you're going to go to dance, you're going to go down this staircase, which curves down and round, to the ballroom that we imagine is down below us. So this is like the sort of ante-chamber between where all the card tables and the drinks and everything are, and the ballroom that's downstairs. Let's go to the next shot of that. So then you're seeing it now from this side, so you can see the handrail of the staircase going down with these railings where you can stand and look down into the entrance into the ballroom. And then there's this long sort of banquette seat and this ruined, wrecked sort of frosted mirror here. Yes. And then this just gives you another view. So there's the staircase going down, and here is this little rail here, where if you're a Mandrika, you can go and watch for Arabella, and other people can do stuff that you don't see, like Matteo and Stenka, and then you can become aware of their conversation and so on. Good. This is more of Arabella, and so when she comes to the ball, she's, of all the characters, of all the women, she's definitely the sort of purest in terms of what the costume's like. The other women have a bit more colour and a little bit more decoration. So again, that feeling that actually it's almost, it's not a wedding dress, but it's very pure. So that when she's having the first duet with Mandrika, although she looks fab for the ball, there's a sense in which there's a kind of purity about it. And then this is her coat for coming back to the hotel. In fact, we see it at the beginning of Act 2 at the back, where she's having it taken off by a waiter before she comes into the room. Which somehow, what I really like about it is when she's imagining being in the sleigh going to his house at the start of Act 3, weirdly, that would be a great coat to wear in the sleigh. You know, it sort of feels good for that. And it has these sort of motional, almost like trees on it, or branches. Yes. So this is, as you can see, the rest of the chorus a bit more dressy, a bit more sort of stuff in contrast. Yep. And then the idea of men. So if you're a gambler in Act 3, you've been in your evening dress, and then you might be in this kind of look when you come back to the hotel later. Just various other characters at the ball, and so on, 2 or 3 officers thrown in there. Yep. So then, this is just to show you a feeling of the little diamonds at the top there. That's the roof of the Opera House in Santa Fe, which are hitting reflected light, so forget them. But this idea, what we wanted at the beginning was very much the feeling that there's this golden glow coming from the ballroom downstairs, which is what these people are lit in as they're looking down there. So it just gives you a sense of that sort of warm golden atmosphere, yes? And again, just really for the sense of this mood of light. Yep. And again, just to show how much this one costume cuts across the rest of these people. Yep. And so then we move, this is just a boldly lit version of Act 3, which of course is about a staircase. So the sort of banquette theme runs through the whole show, because every act has a long curved bench in it. And here, the last curving piece is actually at the very back, as you're seeing through that gap here. And then this curved wall here, and this curve here, if it's for me. And there is also a corridor going off. So this doorway here is a corridor that leads to bedrooms. So in fact, of course, it's just another staircase at the back that you go down, a get-off staircase. But so that's where you go off to your bedrooms up there. Yep. So that's just to show you what's going on under there. Good, next. And that's that other curved wall. And here again, you can see the side black walls with this door in it, the same door we saw before. Yep. And that's again, that's like, they're all a bit sort of squashed in these photographs for some reason, but it's a very tall person. That's Matteo coming out from his night with Stenka at the beginning of Act 3. So this is very much the feeling of the empty hotel at night. Yep. And again, that's just to give you a sense of how the staircase works, and that's obviously Arabella seeing Mandrika looking depressed at the end of the evening when it hasn't worked out how he thought it might, yeah? And that's the idea of the very end when she's coming down with a glass of water. Yep. And this is just to show you how the structure actually works. So this is Act 1. So there's the curve with the 3 bedrooms. Here's the door coming out into between those 2 pillars. And here's the curved seat. But of course that door is actually coming out of what becomes the staircase truck in the 3rd act. So everything is contained within these 3 curves, and then here the curved black walls at the side. And just go to the next. So then that's how Act 2 works. So here's the curved staircase wall with the banquette seat in front of it. Here's the pillars. Here's the staircase down to the ballroom with the golden rails around here. And there's the back curve where the gamblers and people come from. And next. So then here finally is the staircase with the landing and the get-off stairs at the back, and the curve turned around, and then this curve here. And this door here becomes the door where gamblers and people like Waltner can go off to gamble again at the end of the evening and go to the bar and to drink at the end of the evening when all the problems between Arabella and Mandrika have been sorted out. One of our problems will be that we were just talking this morning about what we can get in the rehearsal room to be this staircase, because obviously that act is very much about a staircase, and yet it's hard in the rehearsal room here to create that. So we will do our very best, I hope, to come up with something that allows us to at least stage the act. So yes, I think that's really all I wanted to say. So it's very simple, but actually quite sophisticated at the same time, I think is how it works. Tobias, what else should I have said? Was noch, Liebling?
Was noch im not very much. Right. I mean, maybe just a quick word about the period we have been setting this opera. Strauss and Hofmannsthal were creating this piece in the late 20s, early 30s of the 20th century, and the original setting of it is the mid-late 19th century, so 1860, around that time. Johann Strauss operetta time. And they choose that time. I don't know whether that's of any interest. Shall I carry on? Yeah. They choose that. I find it rather interesting, so I might as well say. They choose that time because for them it sort of represented the sort of beginning of the disintegration of the old Europe. And both of them, of course, Hofmannsthal and Strauss, being very much part of this world and having just gone through the sort of trauma of World War I and talking about that using another time. Now, for a 21st century audience, the 1860s in Vienna represent something slightly different. It represents more Fledermaus and Strauss and Sissi and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the period where we set it, and we thought as they choose their period, we might as well choose ours, represents much more the sort of last moments of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and this world which was going to be sort of swept away in a few years by the end of the First World War and whatever followed. So that's just a little explanation why we set it in that particular period.
Good. I think that's it for now. Unless there's any questions, would anybody like to ask anything pertinent and useful? Or not? Good. And we will work roughly chronologically as far as we can, because I think for those with the larger parts, it's really useful to work in that way because you change as things go along. Good. Dale.
Thank you, Tim.